Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next YouTube video. This one is going to be my initial impressions, first thoughts on the new Netflix show Voltron Legendary Defender. A couple of people asked for my thoughts on it, so I thought I'd do a brief video on it. So straight away, I'm about halfway through the show. I believe I'm going on to episode 6 or 7. I'd have to look it up exactly. It's a bit weird because the first episode is like an hour long and then the rest of them are like 20 minutes or so. So I kind of lose track about, like, they consider the first episode like an hour long and episode 2 is only 20 minutes, but like technically that first 20-minute episode would be episode 4. So, I'm roughly halfway through the season is what I'm trying to get at here. So yeah, this video, I'm not going to go into any sort of spoilers about what has happened up to now. I'm not really going to focus too heavily on like characters or anything like that. This is purely just my initial thoughts on the concept of this series, how well it's written, how I feel it approaches doing things like story, plot, character, and so on. And of course, the reason people are asking for my thoughts on this is because this is the Korra 2.0 show that we were hearing rumors about. This is the show that most of the Korra crew finished on Korra and went to work on. It's the DreamWorks deal with Studio Mir, who obviously animated Korra. They are working on this. They animate Voltron. Like people like Joaquim Dos Santos, Laura Montgomery, Ryuki Hyun, writers like Joshua Hamilton, Tim Hedrick, and so on. They're all big people on Korra. They are working on Voltron now, so there's a lot of interest in terms of, like, a lot of the reason Korra is the way it is because of their approach to writing and stuff like that. A lot of it goes down to Mike and Brian as well. They're some of the only people on the Korra team who aren't working on this. So it's definitely an interesting one to keep an eye out. That's why it has an interest to Avatar fans, and I'm bothering to do a video here. So I think the first thing I want to make clear on this is that I do really like this show. I really like what I've seen, and I can't wait to, I suppose, potentially finish this up within the next couple of days. The first 13 episodes, at least, that are out right now. I'm really enjoying, I'm intrigued by certain aspects of it. I do, though, think it is being a little bit overhyped by people, especially Avatar fans who are kind of jumping on this because of the whole Core 2.0 aspect. It's done by the same people, same animation studio. I think it's being a little overhyped for what it actually is, in that I really like this show's approach, and that it shows the overall approach of the creative team to doing shows, in that they want to make it plot focused, they want to make it character focused, tightly written. They don't want to just make a million episodes about fights and have very little character focus in it like other shows are doing at the moment. Their approach is basically the Korra approach, and the reason I like Avatar and Korra so much, and that they are so character focused, so plot focused, but there's great action in there too. But the way it's written is that it's not just all about the fights, like a kind of like a Power Rangers show or the current Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles show on Nickelodeon, where it could be really good, but they don't focus on the characters enough. They don't focus on the plot enough. So I absolutely appreciate that they're taking the Voltron concept and making it this, really plot-driven, character-focused thing. I think the problem is that the Voltron concept I think the Voltron concept can only be taken so far. Because at a base level, Voltron is a kind of Power Rangers kind of type of show, in that it is a team of people who have a color associated with them. In Power Rangers' case, it's, the Red Ranger, Blue Ranger. In this case, it's Red Paladin, Blue Paladin. And they each have a vehicle associated with them. Part of the Megazord for the Power Rangers. These are the lions for our Voltron characters. And then they all, in both cases, they can combine together to form a giant robot. Megazord in the Power Rangers case, the Voltron Legendary Defender here. And most of the approach of those shows is that it's just, okay, let's form the team and we'll just fight for as many episodes as we feel the need to end it, and then we'll bring it to an end by fighting the final enemy. There's very little character focus in those shows for the most part, apart from an episode here or there. It's just a lot of just, here's a new enemy, let's fight him, let's have the ground battle, and then let's move into the heavy machinery. And I think that's effectively what the older Voltron shows kind of were. whereas this is a much more character-focused approach to that, in that the team forms together, but they focus more on like background behind it, and that there's some backstory with some of the characters that kind of connects them together even before they come together as the five paladins of Voltron. Um, they introduce us to obviously Princess Allura, and she is like being this kind of, from this ancient civilization that is kind of responsible for Voltron, and he is this ancient kind of robot basically. They are in charge of the lines, and how the kind of more modern Earth people of like our main characters come together with these more ancient alien more characters like Allura and her people, and you have an interesting dynamic going on here. So straight away, the approach is different than usual from your typical Voltron Power Rangers type show. The problem though is that as this show gets into more kind of bigger events towards the end of the season, it really highlights that fundamentally those concepts at a base level are kind of limited, in that I don't feel really anything for the villains in Voltron right now at the moment. Now they could do something really interesting with them with some backstory, but right now they are just an alien species who is evil and trying to take over the world for no apparent reason. I like the focus on backstory with some of the characters with them, but as characters, none of the villains have interested me. And it's kind of gone back to the way a lot of those other shows were, where they are just creating enemies for Voltron to fight, for our team of five to fight, and then obviously they get bigger, or they just straight away send a big thing so Voltron can fight it rather than needing a grand battle. And I think that's the kind of problem you're seeing here, in that it is like a Power Rangers show, but they're trying to make it more character and plot focused, and I think that's ultimately what limits it so much. In that it's just a better approach to that, which I absolutely appreciate, and that this is the best Voltron Power Rangers type show I've ever seen because of that extra character focus. I feel a lot more for the characters because they've introduced them to me a lot more. I'm interested to see what's going forward because it's more character focused than a lot of those things. But at the same level, I don't think this show is really ever going to approach the level of a Korra, of an Avatar, because of the limitations of the story, of the concept of Voltron. So it's one of those ones where, like, absolutely continues. From what I'm aware, the first 13 episodes ends in a little bit of a cliffhanger that there's much more to come, and as far as I'm aware, there are going to be at least 26 episodes of Voltron, so there's still basically double what we have right now to come. So I'm interested, absolutely. I want to make that really clear. As much as I'm kind of saying like it's not as good as you quite think it is still very good, and I absolutely recommend other people watch it. My thing is just that for me, this style of show should be more of what much more shows are doing. Like I said, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on Nickelodeon. If it had the same animation style, because I love the animation style of Turtles, but this show's approach to writing characters, to plot, that would be amazing. And that's the problem I'm having with a lot of more Western animated shows of late, in that they feel just fine with just starting out really slow and only later on deciding, okay, here's a plot, here's some character stuff. I much prefer this, where we're just straight in. It's more kind of, it feels more like anime. That's the big thing that a lot of people say with like Avatar, Korra, and so on. In terms of the way it's written and the characters are approached, it feels more like anime than a lot of more Western animated things, which take a more, we're going to have a bunch of episodes and a bunch of fights approach. So I think the problem with Voltron is that it's kind of fighting hard to stick to being a more Avatar and Korra-like show, whereas at a base level, the concept only works when it is a more Power Rangers type show, where it's all about the fighting and stuff like that. But I think it's just about managing to kind of keep it on the super interesting side, where it feels a bit more like Korra. I just don't feel that it should be overly compared to Avatar and Korra, because at a certain point it gets beyond, just comparing character types to character types, and if you just completely compare them to each other, I don't think there's any match. I think Avatar and Korra are both far superior shows, just because the concept and depth of the universe is, I think, a lot higher with Avatar than Voltron. But as I said, it is a really interesting show. Like the fact that they had this concept, which initially I think a lot of people were just like, Voltron, really? That's what the core crew are going on to? And I felt that way is the same. But I like their approach. I'm interested in the concept of Voltron now because of this show and the way they approached doing it. It's just I don't think Avatar fans should overly compare Avatar and Korra to this show, because I've seen a ton of people basically list out all of the characters in Voltron and be like, okay, Keith is Zuko, Lance is Sokka, Paige is Janora or something like that, Allura is Korra, and all of these things where it's just like, okay, yeah, yes, Hunk is very much almost identical to Bolin in a lot of ways, and that's a very obvious one. But I think a lot of the other characters aren't really like Keith and Zuko. Really, like, admittedly, again, as I said, I'm only halfway through the season. This is my just first impressions. He doesn't come across to me as being overly Zuko-like. There are elements, I think, of it, like sort of like, okay, he's got he's on his own path and sort of like that, but the specifics completely get lost after that, outside of the just super base level, like, okay, he's a bit of like an outlier in the group kind of type thing. And the characters in Voltron are all relatively unique. I think Hunk is the only one who obviously is very similar to one of the Korra characters. And that's one, just my thing is just like, for the sake of this show, don't compare it so much to Avatar and Korra. Let it be its own thing and not just Korra 2.0. That's what we need to move away from. In that, look, it's the same crew, and I appreciate their style of show, making Voltron such an interesting concept. But let's stop it there. Let's not compare the quality of this show to the quality of Avatar and Korra, because it doesn't work. So yeah, I'll be talking about this more on a podcast coming up fairly recently. Not this Sunday's podcast. That'll be the Movers podcast on Steven Universe. But next week we'll be doing a special episode where we review the first hour-long episode of Voltron in detail, and then we're probably going to come back on another episode and do a kind of complete Voltron Series 1 review. So on the podcast, Avatar Online podcast, you will see more coverage of Voltron. You'll see more of my specific thoughts on like characters and plot approach and stuff like that. But for now, right now, just be aware that I like this show. I just think it's being a little bit over-exaggerated, and it more highlights that I just want more shows like this, whereas I don't think this should be treated as being one of the best shows ever, whereas I just think this is a kind of cool concept made to seem really cool because of the style of writing that's given to it. But in the comments, let me know your basic thoughts on Voltron, and how you feel about my own thoughts that I just gave right now. But other than that, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.